trying to go for like a period piece thing with the dialogue, it's really weird and off-putting at first, especially if you're not used to people talking that way. Because we're in 2024, and I certainly don't talk like I'm in Othello, but everyone in this game does, and it does take some getting used to. But once you get used to it, it's not that bad. I only have it down as a negative because for me it was so jarring at first that I had to do extra mental gymnastics to figure out what people were saying to me. But yeah, everybody kind of talks with that, like, I don't know if it's Shakespearean or medieval. If you've ever gone to the Ren Fair and like people do that fake English accent and they use, like, they say ye and things like that, it's like that. And it's a little weird, but again, you get used to it relatively quickly. The save system is not great. I don't think anything will ever top Baldur's Gate save system, or it's like 2 buttons to quick save. In this one, you can quick save, but it's not super accurate. It's not, I quick save right before I do this fight. I go into the fight, I die, I get a party wipe, I can immediately reload to that point. It's a little bit looser with where that save point's actually going to restore you. I've lost a lot of progress because I neglected to save regularly, and when you die, which, by the way, you can die, like, really easily. Water, at least at this point in the game, if you fall in water, like, you just instantly die. The water is, like, evil. I don't know if I missed something. But if you or your pawns go in the water, all these, like, tentacles come out and kill you. Your pawns instantly die from that. You will take a hit of your health, but then get spawned back on shore. But if you fall in and that chunk of health they take kills you, then you are dead. Not really sure what the deal is with that. You do have a main pawn that you pick at the beginning of the game, and that pawn can always be revived there's like spirit stones. You can always revive that pawn, so you're not getting complete party wipes. But I have had it where I'm journeying from one city to the next on foot, and all my pawns fall off a cliff into the river and die, and I'm alone until I get to town and can revive my other pawn. And that ties back in with the save system, because when you die, you can either load your last save or you can load your last inn rest when you rest at an inn. And it doesn't tell you the time on that. It doesn't tell you how long it's been since you've done either of those things. So there was a moment in the beginning of the game where I hit the load the last inn rest because I was like, I don't know when either was, when I saved or when I last rested. Yeah, I ended up losing like an hour and a half of gameplay. So my recommendation is, if you're playing, save often and note. You don't have to literally note it, but just kind of mentally note when you rest at these inns. And it's tough at first because the inns are expensive to rest at. You get money pretty quickly. But in the beginning of the game, you're not always able to rest at an inn because it's like 2,000 gold, which you don't have that kind of money in the beginning of the game. I think it would be a pretty easy fix if they just added times. Like if they said this was the time you last saved versus this was the time you last rested at an inn. Seems like a pretty easy fix. And if you listen to other reviews about this game, there is a PS3, an Xbox 360-ness about this game that is tough to describe. If you played the original Dragon's Dogma, which I played a little bit of it, this sequel, like 10 years later, feels like it could have came out relatively recently after the first game. Aspects of this game feel old, but like, I don't know if it's a bad thing. Honestly. I think they stuck to their guns on what they wanted to do, and I admire that. But there are some quality of life things that you might expect from a modern RPG that are not necessarily in this game. I mentioned the saves. What else? Oh, there's only 2 races that you can choose from to create your character. The character creator is very detailed in terms of sculpting and proportions and dimensions of your character. But the 2 races are human or cat person, so you got to be okay with one of those. I went with a cat person just because I thought he looked cool. I made him like a lion man. But like, it's crazy to me that those are the 2 choices. It's like were there cat people on, like, not literally cat people on the development team, but people that just liked cats and were like, we're sticking to this, we're putting cat people in this game? I don't know. It's very strange. But those are your choices. And maybe there's a lore reason. I think people like discriminate against the cat people. I've noticed some dialogue about that. Again, not really paying attention to that. That's my fault. But if you want to play as like an elf, there are elves in the game. I've met some, but you can't make your character one. So I don't know. That's a little weird. And that's one of those things that makes it feel a little bit dated. And then, yeah, the frame rate is also what makes it feel dated because, 30 FPS is bringing me back to 2012. But if you're a fantasy action fan and you've got a tolerance to learn the game's mechanics, which they do take some getting used to, and it does take a little bit to find your flow in this game, I think the payoff is very much worth it. It's always nice to feel cool in a game, and you can feel cool in this game pretty regularly. The game can also make you feel like a moron. If you try to do something cool and like completely fall on your face, like there have been multiple times where I've tried to crawl on an ogre or something, crawl up on it, and I leap off and I try to do this big attack, and I completely whiff and just faceplant and take a chunk of my health off because I just hit the ground. Just yesterday when I was playing, you can knock large enemies across destroyed bridges and use them as a bridge to get across, which was very cool the first time I discovered that. So I knocked this ogre across this destroyed bridge, and I'm trying to get my party across so we can cross this river, and my pawns continue to attack the ogre, so the ogre falls and everybody dies because we fell in the river. So kind of a cool moment for a second there, and then the game's not the game's not perfect, and there is that little bit of jank to it, which I discovered the hard way. But yeah, let me know if you're playing Dragon's Dogma 2. Does it appeal to you? If you have played it, let me know what you think. But those are my thoughts on the game. I hope they were satisfactory. All right, really quickly, I wasn't sure I was going to include this, but it's something I'm having a lot of fun with. So we're going to talk about Marvel Snap again, everybody. I'm desperately waiting for that sponsorship. I'm sure the check is in the mail. But it's a new season of Marvel Snap, dropped just a couple days ago at the time of recording. The season actually snuck up on me. I didn't know what was happening. Usually I check and see how much time is left in the current season, but this one kind of just came out of nowhere. It's Thunderbolts themed if you're a Marvel fan. I think that Thunderbolts movie is coming out eventually. I don't know. But the season pass card is Baron Zemo, who if you watch the Winter Soldier show, Falcon Winter Soldier, he's in that. It's like not the same guy, but same name, I guess. You can also get Red Hulk now. And I'm only mentioning this because Red Hulk was one of my favorite characters when I got into comics. That Greg Pak Incredible Hulk run got me into comics. And 13-year-old Sam thought Red Hulk was cool because he had a gun. I stand by that, by the way. It was cool. And he's like Green Hulk, but he's red. So pretty neat. Anyway, Red Hulk, he's a counter for one of the more popular decks in the game, the High Evo Hulk deck. If you play Marvel Snap, you know what I'm talking about. But it's refreshing to kind of get that. I know Second Dinner, when they talk about developing for this game and releasing new cards, they always talk about release valves, right? If there's a mechanic in the game that some players find frustrating or that's becoming too dominant, they like to put a release valve in the game to kind of offer a little bit of a counter for that, maybe that annoying mechanic. And that's what Red Hulk is here. So I'm really looking forward to this season. I'm back in. I've been playing a lot more. I took a little bit of a break a couple seasons ago, but I'm playing at least once a day now, and I'm having a lot of fun. I think Zemo's ability, he allows you to recruit cards from the enemy deck, so you can steal cards from them and play them. I think it's kind of a new archetype that's a lot of fun. And like I said, again, the game is free. If you have any interest in Marvel or card games or anything, considering it's a free mobile game, it is very lightly monetized. Now, there is a shop with lots of egregious bundles you can buy, but you're not getting a pop-up ad. You're not getting banner ads. I think it's very tame when it comes to a mobile game. But it's one of my favorite games, and I'm going to keep bringing it up on the show whenever I feel like it. But yeah, let me know if you're playing Marvel Snap, if I've convinced any of you to come over and play the game. It's a ton of fun, and I think it's got ever more potential that it continues to realize. But anyway, that's going to wrap things up for episode 6 of No Credits Rolled. Thanks so much for watching. I just want to remind everyone you can email questions or comments to nocreditsrolled@gmail.com. That's nocreditsrolled@gmail.com. Like I said at the top of the show, we've got a call-in line. You can call in and leave us a voicemail at 856-209-0713. That's 856-209-0713, and we just might play it on the air. Make sure to subscribe to No Credits Rolled on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your podcast. And if you're feeling generous, make sure you check out the Patreon. Every little bit helps. That's going to wrap it up for episode 6 today. I'll see you next time on No Credits Rolled.
No Credits Rolled.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of No Credits Rolled. My name is Sam Whalen, and today we're going to be talking about some depressing gaming news, unfortunately, as well as my thoughts on Fallout 76 and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I'm sure you've all been eagerly anticipating my Suicide Squad review. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that the fine folks over at Philly Drinkers have partnered with the show to provide you awesome Philly sports merch for all your favorite teams. Unfortunately, the Sixers have bounced, but the Phillies are red hot right now, so make sure to check out Philly Drinkers for all your Philadelphia sports merch needs. Use the link in the description to get a discount, and every purchase helps out the show. There's also one other thing I wanted to touch on before we get into the news. We, of course, have a call-in line here, and someone was actually nice enough to call in this time. See if you recognize the voice.
Slam! Hello! Sean here. I'm the actor behind Scratch in Baldur's Gate 3. I hope you're keeping well, friend. A little birdie told me that you are starting your own podcast talking about video games and Baldur's Gate 3, no less, which I think is absolutely awesome, and I can't wait to listen in. So I thought, what better way to start things off for you than by giving you some Scratch facts from Baldur's Gate 3. Are you ready? Let's go. 1. Having Scratch in your party is useful for many different things. Not only can he find items without the need for a survival check, but he can also give you an additional perception check. He can revive fallen enemies with his lick, and also he can break concentration saving throws. Cool, right? The best boy of many tricks and talents. 2. If you have Speak with Animals, our favourite spell and feature, am I right? And you have Scratch in your party running around Faerun, when he barks to let you know that he's found something, that is actually me doing the barking. So the barking with Speak with Animals is different to without. 3. Baldur's Gate had approximately 17,000 strands of ending, which is crazy. So just imagine how many versions of the lines we had to record as well. So with Scratch, I mean, there was if you found the owlbear, if you didn't have the owlbear, there's obviously all the different gender options as well, male, female, non-binary. There's if you're in favour, if you're not in favour with Scratch. Yes, I know there's a kind of approval thing as well. So the options are multiple. Just imagine how complicated the epilogue was to write. What I love about the video game world or industry is the community. I've honestly never met as passionate and dedicated and close-knit a community as that of Baldur's Gate 3. I really do think that the people are what make games special. The players, obviously. So I think running a podcast on video games, it's a fundamental part of the community. So, what better way than to celebrate the worlds we love, right? So, Slam, from me, Sean, and from Scratch, the best boy in all of Faerun, we wish you all the very best in the podcasts and games and adventures that you're going to cover. We have no doubt that it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's right, folks. That is, in fact, Sean Mendham, the voice of Scratch the dog from Baldur's Gate 3, one of my favorite characters. And I'm sure if you've met Scratch in Baldur's Gate 3, he's one of your favorite characters as well. My friend Joe, who we had on the show before a couple episodes ago to talk about Helldivers and Baldur's Gate, Joe was nice enough to get me a cameo for the show. So thanks to Joe and thanks to Sean as well. There's a lot of people that go into making a game, and it's always nice to hear from some of the talent too. But of course, you can always call in. I just got to plug the phone line while I can. You can always call in at 856-209-0713. Of course, that's 856-209-0713. And I'd like to hear from you too. All right, enough dilly-dallying. Let's get into the show. So yes, I did tease it at the beginning. We do have some depressing news today to cover, and that is, of course, the Xbox layoffs. It always sucks to talk about layoffs, but Xbox recently announced it was closing a handful of studios. This included Arcane Austin. They created Redfall, but also the Dishonored series, Prey, and Deathloop. Microsoft also announced the closure of Tango Gameworks. They created Hi-Fi Rush, which was widely seen as a success for Xbox at the time, especially at a time when the brand was really struggling. You know, Hi-Fi Rush kind of shadow dropped, came out of nowhere, and people loved it. And, you know, I've only played maybe an hour or two of it. I really do want to complete it, and it's something I would talk about on this show if I did play it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I know that it was very widely accepted, as a great game. Also, Alpha Dog Games is being closed. They're a mobile game developer. They made a game called Wraithborn in 2012 and the recent game Mighty Doom, which is a Doom mobile game. I actually did check that out. Played that a little bit. It's a Doom mobile game, but of course you hate to see anyone get laid off, no matter what kind of stuff they're working on. Of course, all three of these studios are affiliated with Bethesda Studios. Microsoft acquired ZeniMax Media, which is Bethesda's parent company, for $7.5 billion back in 2021. And it was a big deal at the time. I think I talked about it on Insights into Things. I believe we did it once for the Activision Blizzard thing. But either way, that Bethesda acquisition was one of those things, those dominoes we talk about when we talk about Microsoft setting up the dominoes, waiting for this big payoff. And this is kind of the opposite of that, where you acquire a studio and now you're doing these big layoffs. And in some cases, when these studios are producing games that are critically successful and you're shuttering them, how does that make you look? Not super great. You know, when people think Bethesda, they think Elder Scrolls 6. They think maybe a new Fallout game with the success of the Fallout show. But there's other things that Bethesda does. You know, those Dishonored games, people were really hoping to get a third one of those. It doesn't look like that's going to happen now. Prey, people love that Prey game. I enjoyed it. Now, again, didn't finish it. No credits rolled. What do you expect? But Arcane Austin was really known for these like open world, what am I trying to think of here? Like the intricate first person games. I mean, Deathloop, everybody loved that game. I wasn't a big fan of it. People love Deathloop. I think it won all kinds of awards when it came out. I might have won Game of the Year. I should probably fact check that. Of course, they had Redfall, right, which was not well received critically or financially. But they were working on it, right? There was a Redfall update that was supposed to come out. There was DLC that was still being worked on at the time of this closure. So who knows what's going to happen with that? And, you know, if that game's even going to be given a chance at a second chance, if that makes any sense. So at the time of this recording, this is all pretty fresh in the news cycle, right? There's a lot of strong emotions, a lot is still unknown, a lot is still to come. There are rumors that there's going to be more cuts. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds this week because I don't want to speak out of turn or, you know, sort of shoot from the hip. But I feel like I couldn't, if we're going to talk about the news, we have to talk about this, right? I'm not a news outlet, but I do have some sort of obligation to cover these big stories. And this is definitely a big story this week. Like I said, more cuts are rumored to be coming, but we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. You hate to see it no matter what. It's tough to see. Layoffs suck, right? Everybody knows that. I don't think anybody would agree. Anybody would say that layoffs are a fun thing. Personally, I've seen layoffs in my industry recently. You know, everybody's favorite holiday is the end of quarter one when these cuts tend to happen. I'm seeing it now. I've got friends that were laid off, friends that were cut. It all comes down to the bottom line. You know, I know there are economic justifications for layoff. If you are in that position to be making those kind of decisions. But, you know, I don't know if I care. At the end of the day, people are buying into an industry, right? You're buying into the industry you want to pursue with the hope that they can provide for their families and themselves. And with that, hopefully comes a sense of job security. But we're seeing time and time again that there isn't job security. Whether that be in the gaming industry that has had all kinds of layoffs almost on a weekly basis, or in another industry where you think you are in a secure position and then all of a sudden cuts come around again and your name's on the list. like I said, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, and I'm only 24, so I haven't maybe accepted the way that the world seems to work. But if companies continuously put themselves in positions where layoffs are expected, where layoffs are part of the plan, maybe there's something wrong with the plan in the first place, right? Maybe we need to make a world or a system where, practices of overhiring or downsizing or studio consolidations, where these things don't need to happen, where people can land the job they want and feel safe in that job and not have to worry about, the hangman coming around every couple months or so and people getting fired because, profits for the entire company are down or need to be up. And because those profits can always be higher, thanks to capitalism, maybe we're never going to be able to satisfy that beast. I don't know. I'm definitely rambling at this point. So back on track to Xbox. What does this mean for Xbox? I asked that question a lot. We've all been waiting for Xbox to have their big moment with all these game studio acquisitions, Bethesda, Activision. I saw rumors that they're thinking about putting Call of Duty on Games Pass. What are they doing, right? What is their plan going forward? If acquisitions just lead to layoffs, what is the end game? I mean, Tango Gameworks was a critical success, or had a critical success, with Hi-Fi Rush. Unfortunately, financially, the numbers were hurt with the game releasing on Games Pass, which we've talked about before, either on this show or on Insights into Things. When things come out on Games Pass, while more people are able to access it, from a financial point of view, you're typically going to lose money because I believe you are paid a sum, right? You're paid up front by Xbox to acquire this game. And then on Games Pass, you lose some of that revenue from someone just buying the game outright because they're just going to wait for it to come to Games Pass. I mean, that's how I played Hi-Fi Rush, was because Shadow dropped on Games Pass that day. But when your Xbox sets up a system where we say, hey, we're going to acquire your studio, we're going to publish your game, and we're going to publish it on Games Pass, and then we're going to can your studio when it doesn't financially perform well, but because it's on Games Pass is part of the reason why it's not financially performing well. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it doesn't really add up. This is a quote from Aaron Greenberg, who was Xbox's marketing vice president. This is back in 2023. Back in 2023, there were rumors about Hi-Fi Rush not performing well financially, so Greenberg came out and said this. He says, quote, Hi-Fi Rush was a breakout hit for us and our players in all key measurements and expectations. We couldn't be happier with what the team at Tango Gameworks delivered with this surprise release. Well, it turns out they could be happier because they ended up, closing the studio. So I don't know. I don't know if maybe that was just corporate speak at the time to kind of quell those rumors and preserve Microsoft's initiative with these studios going forward. But I mean, there's tons of clips you can find online of, guys like Phil Spencer and all them going on different shows. The Kind of Funny Xcast in particular. Phil did a big thing last year after Redfall came out, a big interview, taking a lot of personal accountability for it. But there are statements in even that interview that are now coming into question because of how Xbox is treating these studios. And, Phil Spencer's one guy, right? He's not like this evil maniacal overlord that is making all these decisions. There's a lot of people behind the scenes at the level higher up in the company that are making these decisions. And of course, at the end of the day, these are all human beings that make these decisions. But when it comes to the corporate side of things, I have a difficult time remembering that. So it's worth saying. So yeah, Xbox acquires studios and then, like I just said, puts their games on Games Pass, impacts sales, and then isn't happy with the sales. There seems to be some kind of logic breakdown here. This is also right after a couple months ago, Hi-Fi Rush became multi-platform, right? It was one of those Xbox games that got put out on PlayStation. This included Sea of Thieves and Grounded. I guess it was too little too late, right, in terms of profit. They didn't make enough money with this multi-platform deal. Or I think if this would have gotten done sooner, maybe you would have seen more benefit, right? If it wasn't just the Games Pass ecosystem, then maybe they would have had more sales in general for the game. But it really just seems like Xbox is just pivoting left and right with what they want to do going forward. And it's not a good look, I don't think. I don't have it in the notes here, but I do know we're waiting on the Indiana Jones game. Let me just verify that is being published by ZeniMax. Yeah, so Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, it's developed by Machine Games, who are the Wolfenstein people, but it's being published by Bethesda. So, maybe Bethesda will be able to kind of recoup from this if that Indiana Jones game comes out and is a big hit, which I suspect it will be, barring it being terrible. All of the signs are pointing that it should be a good game, but we've been disappointed in the past. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know what the plan is for Xbox now, right? I could probably do another whole episode on this. I did an episode on it before, a little more optimistically looking at Xbox plans going forward. But with the treatment of this and the shuttering of all these Bethesda studios, it's difficult to see what the plan is next. And is this the end of, not the end, but this is a big hit on Xbox's plan of acquiring these studios and making games out of them, or making games from them. It's not a good look, especially if you are a studio that Xbox is looking to acquire and you say, well, this is how you treated these Bethesda devs. How are you going to treat us? I don't know. It's not a good look, bottom line. But hey, maybe Elder Scrolls 6 will fix all of our problems when it comes out in 25 years. Anyway, moving on to story number 2 today, we've got some Helldivers drama. I'm sure you have seen this story. It's pretty tough to avoid. But speaking of companies tanking their own brand, let's talk about Sony and the recent Helldivers 2 fiasco. That's right, folks. The Xbots and the Sony ponies. No one's safe this week. I'm coming after both of you. Anyway, despite it seeming to dominate the gaming news feed, believe it or not, this story has only been going on for like a week. It started back on May the 3rd when Sony announced that Steam players would have to link a PlayStation Network account in order to play Helldivers 2. At the time, this was from a community post on Steam, their justification was due to the, quote, technical issues the game faced and at launch that prevented this change from being mandatory, saying that the, quote, grace period was now over. The grace period for linking your account. They also said safety was a concern, saying that the priority was, quote, protecting our players and upholding the values of safety and security provided on PlayStation and PlayStation Studios games, which you can take that with a grain of salt considering the massive amount of data leaks that Sony has had in the last couple of years. But yeah, player safety was allegedly one of the concerns they cited. Now, PC gamers are one of those groups you definitely don't want to piss off, and those PC gamers on Steam without PSN accounts or who just didn't want to do this were justifiably angry with this change. It's worth keeping in mind that Helldivers 2 was Sony's largest PC launch ever. They've been doing a lot of PC ports of games like Last of Us, which I don't think worked too well because the port was bad. All the technical issues that